I want you to raise your hand if you know when the first anti-gun laws were passed in this country. Raise your hand if you do. 1865. You want to know when it happened? We fought a civil war in this country to give black Americans the equal protection under the law that we failed to secure them in 1776. But then you want to know what happened? Southern states passed anti-gun laws that stopped black people from owning guns. The Democrat Party, then as in now, wanted to put them back in chains.
Then as in now, that's quite an accusation about the current Democratic Party. Who and what were you referring to?
I was referring to Joe Biden and his expression of wanting to put them back in chains, dating back to Lyndon Johnson. I think Lyndon Johnson's so-called Great Society was one of the greatest misnomers in American political history, where even back then in the 1960s, 70% plus of black kids were born into two-parent homes. Today, that number is less than 30% in the opposite direction. The very policies that we implemented in this country in the name of helping black Americans have actually been disastrous for black Americans and all Americans. And I think that that's something that we need to wake up to.
In 1865, you were talking about the black codes, right?
That's right.
Passed, enacted to make it a crime for a black person to carry a gun in the
Exactly.
South. But you're equating that to the current president? You're referring to economic chains? What are you saying?
Well, I was referring to Joe Biden's, I think, ill-chosen expression to say they're the party that wants to put you back into chains. What I'm actually saying is that if you look at the policies of the modern Democratic Party...
about Democrats.
Absolutely. So what I'm saying is that actually it's policies like that of Lyndon Johnson and Joe Biden that are actually holding black Americans back.
The war on poverty?
Yes, and in particular his Great Society, where he actually created incentives in the family, where if you're a family, you could actually get more money by not having the father in the home. Guess what you get? You get what you pay for. I think it's been really bad for the black community. I think it's really bad for all Americans.
Do you have anything on this before I move on to China?
I don't see what one has to do with the other, but go on. I took up a lot of time with Fox.
Oh, it's fine. We have time.
I don't really see what one has to do with the other, especially consider and using the Civil War to talk about black Americans. That war was not fought for black people to have guns. That's not.
That war was fought for black people to have freedoms in this country. Yeah. Actually, that's why the Civil War was fought.
Okay.
And the sad part about it...
that wasn't fought for black people to have guns, I think.
Actually, you know, funny fact is, black people did not get to enjoy the other freedoms until their Second Amendment rights were secured. And I think that that's one of the lessons that we learned.
Black people still aren't allowed to enjoy the freedoms.
I disagree with you on that, Don. I disagree with you on it. I think you're doing a disservice to our country by failing to recognize the fact that we have equality before the law.
And you live in this country, then you can disagree with me. But we're not. You mentioned in here that we have three different shades of melanin.
Don, I think we have to be able to talk about these issues in the open, regardless of the color of our skin. Black Americans today, to say that, compare that to 1865 and 1964,
I think for you to compare it to 1865 and 1964
is actually,
I think it's insulting to black people. It's insulting to me as an African American. I don't want to sit here and argue with you because it's infuriating for you to put those things together. It's not right. Your telling of history is wrong.
What part of the history was wrong?
What part of the history was wrong? That the Civil War was fought. You're making people think that the Civil War was fought for black people, only for black people to get guns and for black people to have...
The Civil War was fought for black people in this country to get freedoms, a noble mission. And I think that even after we succeeded, we had to actually secure those freedoms.
To reduce it in a speech at the NRA to say you're making people think, or you're trying to say that black people to get guns, that was the reason that you're there at the NRA. That was the reason for the Civil War.
It is a fact.
That's reductive.
It's not reductive,
I think it's insulting. There are a whole plethora of reasons that for the Civil War.
With due respect, I find your explanation reductive and actually insulting, including to black Americans, to say that black people today, compared to 1964, 1865, haven't made progress in part because of the freedoms we secured. And the Second Amendment was part of what secured that freedom.
I cannot keep a thought if you guys are talking to me in my ear. So hang on 1 second. So to say that black people, say what you said again?
Black people secured their freedoms after the Civil War. It is a historical fact, Don. Just study it. Only after their Second Amendment rights were secured.
They were not secured their freedoms after the Civil War. That is not. You are discounting Reconstruction. You're discounting a whole host of things that happened after the Civil War when it comes to African Americans, including the whole reason that the Civil Rights Movement happened is because black people did not secure their freedoms after the Civil War, and that things turned around. People tried to change the freedoms that were supposed to
And you know
happen
how they got it? They got their
and
Second Amendment rights, and they actually got, the NRA played a big role in that. But today, down the fine...
The NRA did not play a big role
absolutely,
in
they
that.
trained black Americans how to use firearms.
That's a lie. That's not. The NRA did not play a big role in that.
This is just historical fact. But down
not historical fact.
The part that I
just
find...
because you say it's historical fact.
The part that I find insulting is when you say today black Americans don't have those rights after we have gone through civil rights revolution in this country.
You are sitting here telling an African American about the rights and what you find insulting about the way I live, the skin I live in every day.
Here's where you and I have
the
a different
freedoms
point
that
of view.
black and white that black people don't have in this country, and that black people do have.
Well, here's where you and I have a different point of view. I think we should be able to express our views regardless of the color of our skin. We should have this debate
I'm not saying you
without me regarding you as a black man,
insulting that
but
you're
me regarding you
here,
as a fellow citizen.
That you're
That's what I
sitting
think we should
here,
see.
whatever ethnicity you are, explaining to me
whatever ethnicity I am,
about
I'll tell
it's
you,
like to be black in
whatever
America.
ethnicity I am, I'll tell you what I am. I'm an Indian American. I'm proud of it. But I think we should have this debate. Black, white, doesn't matter.
I think we should have this
on
debate.
the content of the
If you're
ideas.
going to do it, you should do it in an honest way and in a fair way. And what you're doing is not an honest and fair way. Okay? But we appreciate you coming on.
With due respect, Don, I look forward to continuing that conversation.
Thank you. The conversation.
Thank you.
Call hello Yahweh, Bashem Yashai, Bashem Rakakwadash. Double honors unto the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who do rule well. Shalom to you of us who are hopeful. Shalom to the elect. Now, almost everywhere I came across this exchange, be it opinion pieces on YouTube or blurbs shared by mainstream media on the web, the overall consensus is Don Lemon got dragged, schooled, and taught an invaluable history lesson by presidential hopeful Vivek Ramaswamy, a self-made millionaire, Second Amendment advocate, anti-woke activist Republican, say that fast 5 times, who got his money from selling the miracle drug that supposedly treats Alzheimer's. Monsieur Ramaswamy, if I'm pronouncing his name right, is a descendant of parents who are immigrated from South India, I believe. Now, according to the scriptures, this would make Mr. Vivek an Elamite. In Ezra, the 4th chapter, Elam is one of the nations that were resettled in Assyria by King Artaxerxes after he had deported Israel from that region. There are several theories on how the Elamites ended up in India. Some scholars say through trade and commerce, others say through the Aryan migration, some even say through the Scythian invasion. In Psalm 83, the conspiracy against Israel, they are known as the Assyrians, the modern day Iraqis and Iranians, as well as the so-called East Indians, if you will. And we'll go there in a sec because this head-to-head between Don Lemon and Vivek that I suspect was intentionally by hidden hands, of course, exaggerated to the point it has now taken on a life of its own, is the same narrative that further lends to this new, not so new initiative. The powers that shouldn't be are spearheading in an attempt to erase and suppress what really happened regarding transatlantic slavery. If you ask me, I wouldn't mistake Mr. Ramaswamy for one of us, never mind his fairer skin and the common knowledge of how that plays under the caste system that India is known for, keeping in mind Esau's involvement, of course, says the British. That is not the factor for me as far as discerning which house he comes from. For one, it's no secret the Rothschilds colonized India and looted their gold. Ergo, they were subject to some of the curses we experienced. Keeping in mind, Israel is scattered throughout all nations. Besides, contrary to recent demonization and popular belief, this thing of ours is not about color, it's about spirit. Really, it comes down to nothing he said during his exchange with Don Lemon screamed Israelite plight to me, especially his interpretation of what he claims to be our historical facts. Where is all this freedom we were supposed to have received since the Civil War and the Emancipation Proclamation? Where is it? I said it in my last video and I'm gonna say it again. Those who feels it knows. I don't know one so-called melanated person conscious of what's really going on as far as who rules the world today, who feels right now, this present day, they are free to do and say as they please under the statutes of Esau's laws. especially in enjoying the rights they are supposed to be afforded as tax-paying citizens. Where is my right to say what my children should be taught in school and what the curriculum should involve? I don't see it. Democrat, Republican, the whole system is a sham and has ran amok a long time ago. Truly. And having a discussion about race relations despite the color of your skin is one thing, but trying to tell me how the fire feels while you're spectating, standing under a sprinkler, is a totally different exchange. I don't see any Ramjeets, Rupinders, or Hardeeps getting their heads split open to the white meat by civil servants who are sworn to protect you. Trust me, you would have seen it on TikTok or on WION, and there would have definitely been something said about it. And so for me, off the top, I wasn't buying into his Edomite, i.e. Caucasian race theory. Truth be told, you being non-so-called white does not qualify you in identifying with the trials and tribulations of so-called people of color, specifically so-called Afro-Americans, Hispanics, and Native Indians who have suffered under a system that clearly shows a disparity in treatment when involving so-called blacks and browns. And Mr. Vivek proves this by all the strides in progress and advancements he claims so-called people of color have made. I don't care how much you paid for those rose-colored glasses, sir. I am not buying, okay? Psalm 83, let's go there. Psalms 83 and 1, and it says this: Keep not thou silence, O Yahweh. Hold not thy peace, and be not still, O Yahweh. Again, if this chapter had a title, it would be called The Conspiracy Against the Children of Zion, or The Conspiracy Against We Israelites. As we get more into it, you'll understand why. In any event, this is one of the main reasons why all the other nations are going into captivity under we Israelites, for joining themselves to the so-called white man, or to white supremacy, or to the white establishment, so you can understand who was and is instrumental in enslaving us and spoiling us as a nation and a people. Keep not thou silence, speaking to the power and spirit of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, and this truth coming out. With that being said, we should always be mindful of all the lengths white supremacy and the white establishment has gone to keep this truth from coming out or to getting to us. Never mind all the information and the behind-the-scenes operations he's still engaged in, attempting to keep us down. We're not privy to. Mr. Ramaswamy, you know what? I'm just gonna call him Vec. Ergo Vec, in this diatribe concerning why the Civil War was fought, he said, "We fought a civil war in this country to give black Americans the equal protections under the law." Now, what he said about the Democrats wanting to keep us in chains, I mean, which political party doesn't? LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson. Ironically, Bain means death. LBJ said, "I'll have them niggers voting Democrat for the next 200 years, and I believe that marginalizing them was always the intended agenda, not civil rights and not voting rights, because even though the apartheid conditions in the South stopped, the laws he signed had little effect in changing racial conditions in the North. But as I've said before, democracy on a whole is an illusion. There is no choice. Presidents are selected, not elected. Really, government is of the rich, by the rich, for the rich. And so the two-pronged system of political parties is just another way for the powers that shouldn't be to divide and control the people. Benjamin Franklin said himself, democracy is two wolves and a lamb voting on what to have for lunch. Liberty is a well-armed lamb contesting the vote. But saying the Civil War was fought to give us equal protections under the law, and that the NRA helped facilitate freedom, that's a Maury Povich lie. Let me read you a quote from German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck. He said this regarding the Civil War: "The division of the United States into federations of equal force was decided long before the Civil War by the high financial powers of Europe. These bankers were afraid that the U.S., if they remained as one bloc and as one nation, would attain economic and financial independence, which would upset their financial domination over the world." Okay? Slavery was one of the causes, but not in the way you think. The truth is, the Rothschilds, or For all intent and purposes, Esau went in with this in mind. Branches of the family funding both sides of the war. Slavery was just the issue they used to push and cement the divide, okay? Lincoln refused to accept the 28% interest or however much it was on his loan and went ahead and created the greenback. So, you know what they did? They JFK'd him. All you have to do is follow the money. And by now, if you frequent my channel, you should be sick of me breaking down what emancipation really means. Simply put, to pass from one hand or form of slavery to the next, okay? And so most definitely, the Civil War was not fought to forward the Second Amendment rights of so-called black people. Besides, the first anti-gun laws were passed way before 1865, if memory serves me correct. Never mind the slave and black codes that Vec did mention, which did not permit so-called Negroes to carry guns, or the all-out laws like the one in Mississippi, for example, that prevented them from owning guns. Abraham Lincoln himself said, "My paramount object in this struggle is to save the Union and is not either to save or to destroy slavery." Okay? So, Mr. Ramaswamy, Vivek, whatever your goddamn name is, cool it. Cool it now, because you're full of and we caught you. Psalm 83:2, and it says this, "For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head." They make a tumult. In the Hebrew, the word for tumult is hama. It means to murmur, growl, roar, cry aloud, mourn, rage, sound, make noise, be clamorous, be disquieted, be loud, be moved, be troubled, be in an uproar. Esau and the nations confederate are in an uproar because they know they are about to be stripped of their power, and they've understood this fact for a very, 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 very long time. Ever since Cristobal Colon, aka Christopher Columbus, landed on Western shores to rape, rob, pillage the land resources, and subjugate Los Niños de la Indio, the children of God, it has been ever so clear Esau is aware of what Yahweh has in store, okay? Lifting up the head means Esau and the other nations are coming against we Israelites. Another point to be made regarding Vec's claim, the securing of Second Amendment rights is how Jake gained their freedom. At least for those of you who have eyes to see, is why would the overseer, who has clearly lifted up his head, why would he ever give the slave the tools necessary to get off of the plantation and put him and his family in a position of power? Explain this to me. The NRA did not play a role in nothing, okay? When the highest court in the land said white supremacists could lawfully confiscate so-called colored people's guns, what did the NRA do? The same thing they done when California passed gun reform against the Black Panther Party. Nothing, okay? Caught you again, you're full of it. Besides, and again, going back to all these supposed freedoms we got to exercise our Yahweh-given rights to because of the Civil War. What about the KKK, Jim Crow, redlining? What about sundown towns? What about eugenics? What about Planned Parenthood and mandatory sterilization laws? What about COINTELPRO? What about the assassination of so-called black leaders who ever had enough guts to speak truth to power during civil rights? To Don Lemon's point, what about relocation and civil rights? How Vec missed the civil part is beyond me. What about the living conditions in the ghetto? And for those of us who truly understand American history and the fact that it was in 1682, the state of Virginia thought it prudent to join we so-called Native Americans, i.e. the Northern Kingdom of Israel, and so-called Africans, really we so-called Negroes, i.e. the Southern Kingdom of Israel, into one racial category to be recognized as Negroes and other slaves. What about smallpox blankets, the Trail of Tears, empty promises and broken treaties, the conditions of so-called Indian reservations? Think about social services, removing the father from the home in 60s and 70s, which Vec did, he did highlight as a point, which helped facilitate the destruction of the so-called black nuclear family, followed by child support orders, support payments, and of course there's the almighty garnishing of pay, which helped to retard any idea of generational wealth. And then there's the flooding of so-called minority neighborhoods with heroin, tobacco and alcohol, malt liquor, abominable foods with poisonous preservatives. What about the crack epidemic? What about 3 strikes rule? What about mass incarceration? What about the prison industrial complex? Mandatory minimum penalties. What about institutional racism? What about police brutality? Where in the hell do you get freedom out of that? Talk amongst yourselves. I just don't see it. If Vec truly understood the afflictions and the atrocities, the so-called black man and the black family and and brown people, period, alike, faced in Babylon, he would have never fixed his crooked mouth to say that mess. Trust and believe. Psalm 83:3. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people and consulted against thy hidden ones. This is the conspiracy against the nation of Israel. Con meaning with or together, spire meaning breathe, pursuant to the spirit. Ergo, the nations with Esau at the head devised crafty, meaning they dealt subtly like the snake in the Garden of Eden, i.e., finding clever yet deceitful ways to raise their spirits, raise their hands, raise the prices, raise taxes, raise death, destruction, raise the hellish conditions we still suffer through being the true children of the living power. Okay, we are the hidden ones, we so-called Negroes, Hispanics, and Native American Indians. They removed our relics pursuant to First Maccabees 3 and verse 48. They painted their likeness in our holy books. If we were caught reading, we suffered under their hands corporal punishment, shackled, beaten, and whipped. But if we were caught reading the Bible and documents where our true history was translated, capital punishment, meaning death. That is why we are known as bywords like nigger or spick or beaner, political designations like Spanish or Mexican, and social constructs like black or West Indian. Esau hid us to spoil us by assuming our identity as his own. Yahweh hid our true identity as his heritage to preserve us in these end times. For those who, again, have eyes to see and ears to hear, ideas like I have a right as a person of color, i.e. a native of India now living in America, the land that was built off of our blood, sweat, and tears. Because I'm almost brown like you, I have the right to lead the conversation and dictate how you should feel about how your demographic was treated is a clear example of consulting against thy hidden ones. Let's close with this, and I didn't intend to spend too much time on this anyways. Let's keep it simple and teach it real. Galatians 4:16, and it says this, am I therefore become your enemy because I tell you the truth? Well, apparently so, because Alternative Don, aka Don Lemonade, spoke out against anti-wokeness and Esau's present agenda in ridding the world of critical race fact. Despite all the bidding he's done for the elites behind CNN all these years, when you no longer fit the program, forget time spent in dedication, forget seniority, you are expendable, my friend. And by now everybody knows Don got canned from CNN more than a week later after this exchange. Most say it's because of his remarks regarding this exchange. And by the way, happy hunting, Feck. They're not going to elect you. You're not black enough. Some say it's because of the remarks he made about what's her name and her not being in her prime. Go ahead and look it up yourselves. The elder from Baltimore did a lesson on it. I'll add the link to it in the description box. And then maybe they got rid of Mr. Lemon because the elections are on the way and they want to protect whatever narrative the elite plan on spinning next. Hence, Tucker Carlson also being fired on the very same day. I think they fired Don without notice, any real notice, because he told the goddamn truth. But what do I know? I'm just a humble servant of the Heavenly Father. Call halal Yahweh Bashem Yahushai Bashem Akakwadash through the power and spirit. I hope you are edified. Double honors unto the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who teach us 100% truth and rule well. Salutations to the hopeful elect. Remember, no test, no jab, and damn sure, don't take that C to the H to the I to the P. Shalom Yasharallah. Shalom to the elect.